What's going on, guys? Welcome to Ralph's Real Review Disney Edition, where today we are going to be going over Bambi. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. We are trying to grow our subscriber base so that we can build a bit of a community here as we progress through these movies. So if you haven't subscribed yet, our new goal is 25 subs. Go ahead and subscribe, turn on the notifications, and whenever I have a new review, you will be able to see it. The plot of Bambi is very straightforward. You have a deer who was born in the woods, and the deer has to learn how to grow up and experience life. That's it. Bambi is born. Bambi is the prince of the forest, but Bambi needs to learn how to live. Like, that's literally the movie. I'm going to go straight into it, starting with the animation category. I do have Bambi at 4, ahead of Snow White and behind Dumbo. Honestly, I do have it kind of tied with Dumbo, but the tiebreaker between the two of these pictures comes in 3 formats, right? The first is the fact that Dumbo was made a year earlier. Second, it was made on a lesser budget. And third, I felt like the highs of Dumbo were better than the highs of Bambi as a viewer. I know from an animation technicality standpoint that there's, different ways that the backgrounds are made and all that, but I'm saying as a viewer, as someone who has just watched Dumbo and is now watching Bambi, I felt like they were pretty tied in terms of the animation. And Pink Elephants on Parade to me was the high of the animation of Dumbo. I would say the forest fire scene is probably the high of the animation of Bambi, maybe when he's first born and you see Bambi learning how to stand and all that. But I think that, again, just more visually spectacular. I thought the high of Dumbo was higher than the high of Bambi. Moving on to storytelling, this is where I find that Bambi really struggled. I have Bambi in dead last, 5th place right now, for storytelling. And the main reason is that the point of Bambi is to watch Bambi grow up. That is the plot. You spend a lot of the movie like wondering what's going to happen or where like the tension is going to come from. But the reality of it is, if you look from second 1 to the last second, the story is about Bambi growing up. The issue is that Bambi grows up off screen. So, spoiler alert, the movie is about 80 years old at this point, but Bambi's mom gets shot. And then Bambi gets taken by his dad, and then he grows up off screen and then comes back to the forest. He was a baby, he goes off screen, he comes back, and now he's a little bit more grown over the course of a year. And yeah, like, to me, when the point of the movie is to see somebody grow up and then you don't see them grow up, or you see them, after a time lapse and you don't know how they grew the way that they came to grow, to me, the storytelling felt bad. And I did feel that the movie was dull. Snow White, for what it's worth, like, it didn't feel boring to me. Pinocchio didn't feel boring to me. Dumbo didn't feel boring to me. Fantasia, I could say it did, but again, where Fantasia got its points was that Fantasia was telling a story in a completely different way. It was revolutionary, which is why I give it so much props. Bambi, it was just boring. It was boring, and to me, the whole point of the story was done off screen. So I can't give it anything higher than 5 for now. When it came to characters, I'm going to go ahead and put Bambi at 4 too. It's ahead of Fantasia because it has an original character, which Fantasia has original characters too, but I didn't find that any of them are as iconic as Bambi. So when, again, our two criteria are memorability of characters and strength of characters, Bambi is a memorable character, that's for sure. We know who Bambi is if we see Bambi. Thumper is questionable. I would wonder how many people, if they saw Thumper, would know his name was Thumper. But when it comes to strength of character, I felt that Tim Q Mouse was a strong character. I felt that Mrs. Jumbo was a strong character. Bambi is a bunch of cute characters, right? Which, this is a Disney movie and we're doing a Disney review. There's going to be a lot of cute characters. That doesn't make them strong characters. So as much as I like Bambi and I like Thumper, it's because they're adorable animals, and that's all they have to offer, really. So I'm going to go ahead and put Bambi at 4 for characters. Next, I have the Disney factor, and the Disney factor was actually really hard to place for Bambi because Bambi has its moments where it feels a lot like Disney, but it also has like this weird like dread over a lot of it. And maybe it's the boredom that kind of seeps in at some point, but the reality of it is, for me, I put Bambi at 3, behind Fantasia, but ahead of Pinocchio. I feel like in Pinocchio, there's disturbing visuals, and in Dumbo, there's the overt racism that kind of take it down a notch, like takes you out of the movie. Bambi, I don't ever feel takes you out of the movie, which is why I put it above those two things. But again, that overarching feel of like dread and, Bambi's mom dying and the forest burning, like, there's bad parts in Disney movies, but it just felt like it hung over this movie. But then again, the flip side of that is when it does have its Disney moments, it does feel a lot like Disney. You have the animals, they're adorable, they're cute, the animation is fine. So I think it's mediocre, which is why it's at 3. Next comes the music, and this is an example of a movie having original music, but I'm not putting it ahead of Fantasia because Bambi's music to me is utterly forgettable. I am going to go ahead and acknowledge it did get an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song, so I understand that. But again, looking at it 80 years later, there is not a song from that movie that I can say I want to hear again. Fantasia, again, for what it's worth, the movie is centered around music, and again I can say, like, I understand that it's not original music, but for Bambi I feel like I wouldn't even mind if the music wasn't there at all. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put Bambi at 5 there. Some people are going to be upset with it. It's okay. Next is box office success, where Bambi is going to come in fourth at 596 million. I keep wanting to say thousand. $596,958,188 adjusted for inflation. What becomes really interesting with Bambi compared to some of these other ones, and again, these movies had re-releases because of the way that media happened over time, right? Pinocchio had re-releases, Fantasia had re-releases. Bambi had 8 re-releases, which right now is the most. Now, 7 of those were domestic. One of them was in Australia in 2021. But to have 8 re-releases is crazy. And what's even more crazy is that the releases tended to make more money over time. Now, you could look at that and say, well, there's inflation. That makes more sense. And I didn't take time to look at the numbers individually and see if they really made more money every time. But to see the grosses come back higher and higher and higher after 8 re-releases of Bambi was a little bit impressive. But Bambi does fall in fourth behind Pinocchio and ahead of Dumbo. And again, that Dumbo estimation, it looks lower and lower every time I do this list. So if you guys, if anyone knows of a way to get the real adjusted for inflation numbers on Dumbo, Box Office Mojo does not have it. That's who I mostly rely on. Please feel free to let me know. And then finally, we have the historical significance of Bambi. And I'm going to go ahead and put Bambi right in the middle again here at 3, because I feel like the historical significance, I've been doing that in the eyes of the company in terms of the historical significance behind what Bambi means to the company. But I feel like Bambi's historical significance hits more from the legacy of film in general. While we look at Walt Disney now, and they did at the time as a visionary, Walt Disney was a lot more controversial in his time, and Bambi was an example of that. There was a lot of people who did not like Bambi at the time of its release. They had mixed reviews. Nowadays, it's praised as a classic, but back then that was not the case. So, as terms of what it did for the company at the time, I'm not sure it did too much. However, you can look at this and say that this is the first time an animated movie really had something important to say. Man is set up as the antagonist in this film. Bambi lives in the forest with his mom, and his dad sometimes pops in. They have a weird dynamic. But the whole point of it is man is never shown. Man is only spoken, right? So Bambi, whenever you hear the gunshots go off, they're like, "Hey, man is around. We gotta go." At the end of the day, man ends up burning down the forest. So having man as this antagonist to nature in a way that is very visible was important in the history of film, right? And Paul McCartney is quoted as saying, "Hey, watching Bambi made me believe and want to get into animal rights." Like, it did inspire an animal rights movement. So I do have to give it some historical significance props. I do have it behind Snow White, again, the first animated film ever. It's not going to beat that. And then I do have it behind Pinocchio because I feel like Pinocchio was a bigger deal for the Walt Disney Company over the course of the history of the company, whereas Bambi, I feel like, was more appreciated over time, but not necessarily something that was like beneficial to the Walt Disney Company specifically. Finally, I'm going to go into my tiered rankings here, and I am going to admit that I am significantly lower on Bambi. I almost said Dumbo. I am significantly lower on Bambi than most film critics are. I feel like Bambi, again, is going to be an artist movie. It's going to have its niche with animal lovers specifically. However, I did find Bambi to be quite boring, and when I find that your story is not too involved, it's going to be hard for me to put you higher than a 2 or a 3. So I have Bambi dead last in storytelling. So with that being said, the characters are not necessarily too strong in my opinion. A lot of the importance of this movie comes from the activist side of it. But again, for audiences 80 years later, I don't think that Bambi is a watchable movie. I would argue that Bambi is completely skippable. However, for the sake of the tears, I do think that because there is some animal rights interest in there, because Bambi in and of itself is an iconic character, Bambi himself is iconic. I did decide to take it up from its skippable to something for Disney diehard fans only. I would tell a casual audience member is not necessarily something you have to see. It's going to be a niche movie. If you are super into the history of animation, you could watch it. If you're super into animal rights and interests, you can watch it. But for a general audience member, I would say you can move on. What do you guys think? Do you like Bambi? Am I too hard on Bambi? Do you have it higher? Let me know what you think in the comments. But again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, guys. If you guys could share these videos, that would be awesome. Again, when it comes to like the actual views and the view counts and the watch hours, like I'm not really getting into the logistics of that. What's really important to me is to have a high subscriber base, because that's going to be people who are notified that these videos are coming out, who can see that on their dashboard when videos are coming out. And then to me, all that other stuff, the views and stuff, the community builds from that. If you know that we're here and you know that we're uploading, then you can pop in and watch a video or two here and there and kind of share your opinion. So please, guys, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to share. You can find me on TikTok at Ralph's Rapid Reviews, which I found out how to put those on YouTube. So my rapid reviews will also be shorts on YouTube. Or you can follow me on TikTok at Ralph's Rapid Reviews. Or you can follow me on Instagram at Ralph's Review, so that you guys can be, I post there whenever I post here or on TikTok. So thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. I will be going to Orlando actually tomorrow, so I might be able to get a review or two out from Orlando. Maybe I'll do a Ralph's Rapid review from Disney. That would be dope. All right, guys.